They thought I'd never find out. They planned it all behind my back, my husband and my best friend. The affair, the lies, even the secret accounts. But they made one fatal mistake. They underestimated me. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a story about revenge. About a woman who lost everything, and then took it all back. So buckle up. Because when trust is broken, the real story begins. The discovery of betrayal is often one of the most heart-wrenching experiences a person can endure, especially when it comes from those closest to them. For the protagonist, this discovery was nothing short of life-altering. Her world, once filled with trust and love, now lay shattered before her. She had always believed in the sanctity of her marriage, the bond she shared with her husband, and the friendship she had cultivated with her best friend. Little did she know, those very bonds were being manipulated, and her trust was being used against her. The discovery came on a seemingly ordinary day, when she was least prepared for the emotional storm that would follow. She had attended a reunion, a gathering of old friends and classmates that promised nothing more than a nostalgic trip down memory lane. What she didn't expect was that this gathering would be the catalyst for uncovering the most devastating secret of her life. It started innocuously enough. She was greeted with warm smiles, laughter, and familiar faces. But the atmosphere quickly shifted when she overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. Her husband, the man she had devoted herself to, was not just speaking with her best friend, but the two were exchanging looks that spoke volumes. Her heart sank as she realized the depth of the betrayal. It wasn't just an affair, this was something far more calculated and malicious. The conversation she overheard hinted at plans that went beyond mere infidelity. There were whispers of manipulation, deceit, and a financial plot to leave her penniless. The shock of hearing these words left her teary-eyed, her mind racing as she tried to process the enormity of what was unfolding. Grigory, a close friend who had always been supportive, expressed his concern, apologizing for not being able to stay longer at the reunion. But it wasn't his absence that concerned her, it was the truth that he, along with others, had seen and known what was going on. She was being betrayed not just by her husband, but by her closest circle. As her mind reeled with disbelief, she learned that her best friend, whom she had trusted with her deepest secrets, was actively conspiring against her. This betrayal was not only emotional but also financial. They had planned to strip her of everything she had worked so hard for, leaving her vulnerable and exposed. It was a calculated move, one that left her feeling more like a pawn in their game rather than the loved partner she had always believed herself to be. The protagonist's initial reaction was a mixture of shock, anger, and confusion. How could this happen? How could the people she trusted the most, those she had shared her life with, turn on her so callously? It wasn't just the affair that hurt, it was the realization that her entire life, her sense of security and belonging, had been a lie. She had been living in a world of illusion, believing that her marriage and her friendships were built on trust and mutual respect. But now, everything she thought she knew about the people closest to her was turned upside down. She tried to confront them, but the confrontation was not as she had imagined. She was met with deflections, lies, and even gaslighting. Her husband and best friend denied everything, dismissing her concerns as paranoid or overreacting. The gaslighting only added to her confusion, making her question her own judgment. Were they right? Was she imagining things? But deep down, she knew the truth, even if she didn't want to accept it. The reality was clear, she was the last to know, and by the time she discovered what was going on, the betrayal was far deeper and more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. It wasn't just the emotional betrayal that hurt her, it was the strategic, almost cold-hearted manipulation. She realized that her husband and best friend had been planning this for months, carefully plotting behind her back while maintaining the appearance of a happy, normal life. The cruelty of it all was almost unbearable. They had been using her, taking advantage of her trust and love, all while preparing to tear apart the very foundation of her life. It was a devastating blow, one that left her questioning not only her marriage but also her entire sense of self. But in the midst of the pain, something shifted within her. This discovery, as painful as it was, ignited a fire within her. It was as if the betrayal had awakened something dormant inside her, something powerful and determined. She would not let them destroy her. She would not go down without a fight. The woman who had been blindsided by betrayal was now the woman who would take control of her life once more. She began to strategize, to plan her next move carefully and deliberately. Her emotions, though raw, were no longer a weakness, they were her strength. She would use her pain as fuel for the fire of her revenge. The initial shock began to wear off as the protagonist took her first steps towards reclaiming her power. She started gathering evidence, carefully documenting every piece of information she could find. She knew that the path ahead would be long and arduous, but she was ready. This was not just about getting revenge, it was about reclaiming her life, her dignity, and her future. She would no longer be a victim, she would be the one in control. And with every step, she grew more resolute in her determination to expose the betrayal and make sure those responsible paid the price for their actions. The journey from here on out would not be easy, but it was one she was prepared to take, no matter the cost. The night started like any other, filled with laughter and the warm hum of familiar faces. Yet, beneath the surface of cheerful greetings and smiles, a storm was brewing for the protagonist. It was supposed to be a simple reunion, nothing more than a gathering of old friends and classmates, a brief reprieve from the responsibilities of everyday life. Little did she know, this evening would mark the beginning of her journey into the depths of betrayal, and the discovery that the people she trusted most were conspiring against her. It all started with a chance overhearing. She had been chatting with a few acquaintances when a whispered conversation between her husband and best friend caught her attention. The words, though muffled, sent an icy shiver down her spine. "We can't keep doing this. It's all part of the plan." Her husband's voice, low but unmistakable, drifted across the room. She froze. Her heart pounded in her chest as confusion turned to dread. The betrayal wasn't just about infidelity, it was something much darker, something much more calculated. With a racing heart and trembling hands, she stepped away from the crowd, her mind spinning. Could she have heard that correctly? Was she just being paranoid? But then, the sickening realization settled in, this wasn't paranoia. The truth was right in front of her, hiding in plain sight, whispered behind the veil of casual conversation. Her best friend and her husband were not just involved in an affair, they had been planning her financial downfall, plotting to strip her of everything she had worked for. Her mind raced as 1,000 thoughts clashed together. How long had this been going on? How long had she been blind to the truth? The people she loved most, the ones she had trusted implicitly, had betrayed her in ways she couldn't have imagined. It felt like the ground beneath her feet had been pulled out, leaving her gasping for air, trying to make sense of what was happening. The shock was suffocating, a heavy weight that pressed against her chest, making it hard to breathe. She wanted to confront them immediately, to scream at them, ask them why. But there was something more pressing, something more important than confronting them in that moment. It was a gut feeling, a realization that she needed to approach this carefully, with a cool head. She couldn't let the emotional turmoil cloud her judgment. She had to uncover the full extent of their betrayal before taking any steps. So, she retreated. She withdrew into herself, seeking the quiet solitude of her thoughts. The anger bubbled just beneath the surface, but there was a part of her that knew she needed to be patient, to plan her next move with precision. The rage would come later, but for now, she needed to understand the full picture. Days passed, and the protagonist found herself consumed by thoughts of betrayal. The more she thought about it, the clearer the pieces started to fall into place. There had been signs, of course, little things she had brushed aside in the past. The late nights at the office, the strange behavior, the occasional unexplained absences. They all made sense now, but the betrayal ran deeper than she could have imagined. This wasn't just about a secret affair. It was a well-thought-out plan, one that would leave her penniless and alone, with nothing but the remnants of the life she had built with the man she loved. Determined to get to the bottom of it, she began to gather evidence. She knew that to confront them, she needed more than just suspicions. She needed cold, hard proof. The protagonist's mind, sharp and methodical, began to piece together the scattered clues. She knew her husband's patterns, his habits, and it was these very things that would work in her favor. She started by searching through his things, his phone, his email accounts, any document that could provide a glimpse into his secret life. Every text message, every phone call, every bank statement was a potential lead. It wasn't easy. She had to move quietly, almost stealthily, avoiding suspicion at all costs. But the thrill of the hunt, the need to expose the truth, drove her forward. Each discovery felt like a small victory, though the weight of each piece of evidence weighed heavily on her. There was no longer any question in her mind. Her husband and best friend had been working together to destroy her, to rob her of her dignity and security. The documents she found, though small and inconspicuous at first glance, painted a picture of an elaborate scheme. Her husband, once a figure of trust and affection, had become a stranger. His emails, once filled with mundane updates and words of love, were now riddled with coded messages, plans, and financial transactions. Her best friend's name appeared on those same documents, acting as a collaborator in this twisted game. The emotional toll of these discoveries began to add up. It was not just the betrayal itself, but the realization that the people she had loved and trusted had been deceiving her for so long. Her heart ached as she realized how little she truly knew about the people in her life. The lies, the manipulation, and the false reassurances, everything now seemed like a carefully crafted illusion. But she couldn't afford to wallow in despair. She had to stay focused. With each new piece of evidence, she felt a sense of clarity begin to form. She was no longer in the dark, no longer blind to the truth. Every secret she uncovered was a step closer to taking back control, to regaining the power she had lost. But she knew that the true test would be confronting them, forcing them to face the consequences of their actions. She couldn't do that until she had everything she needed, every document, every text, every conversation. She couldn't afford to miss anything. The deeper she dug, the more she realized the full extent of the deception. Her husband had set up hidden accounts, siphoning money away from their joint savings for months. Small amounts, almost imperceptible, but all adding up to something much bigger than she had initially believed. Her best friend had been in on it from the beginning, working alongside him to ensure that when the time came, she would have nothing. It wasn't just about the money, though. The betrayal ran deeper, touching every aspect of her life, the trust she had placed in them, the love she had given them, and the security she had worked so hard to build. All of it had been torn down, piece by piece, by the very people she had trusted the most. It wasn't just the financial aspect of the betrayal that hurt the most, it was the emotional manipulation. The guilt trips, the constant reassurances that everything was fine, that nothing was wrong. Her best friend had been the one to console her when things felt off, to reassure her that she was just being paranoid, that her husband loved her. And yet, all along, it had been a lie. She felt like a fool, betrayed not only in her love life but in her very sense of self. The emotional devastation was almost as painful as the financial betrayal. Despite the overwhelming weight of it all, the protagonist remained focused. She couldn't let herself fall apart. This was not just about revenge, it was about justice, reclaiming her life, and taking back control. With every piece of evidence, her resolve strengthened. Each document, each photo, each phone call was a reminder of the betrayal she had endured, but it was also a step toward her ultimate goal. She would confront them, expose the truth, and rebuild her life. This journey, painful as it was, would make her stronger. And once the truth was out, she would no longer be the victim. She would be the one who emerged victorious. The days that followed the discovery were a blur of anger, confusion, and disbelief. What had once been a life built on trust and love now lay in tatters, torn apart by the actions of those closest to her. Yet, beneath the overwhelming shock and sorrow, a fire began to ignite within the protagonist. As the reality of the betrayal sank in, she started to understand that she had two choices: to succumb to the grief and hopelessness that threatened to drown her, or to rise above it, to take control, and to make the people who had wronged her face the consequences of their actions. It was in that moment of clarity that she chose her path, revenge, but not the kind driven by mindless anger. This would be a calculated, strategic, and carefully executed plan to turn the tables on those who thought they could destroy her. At first, it was hard to focus. Her emotions clouded her judgment, and her mind kept flashing back to the images of her husband and best friend together, their whispered secrets hanging in the air like a poison. The betrayal wasn't just a violation of trust, it was a deliberate act that had shaken the very foundation of her life. But despite the gut-wrenching pain, she knew that to heal and reclaim her power, she couldn't allow herself to be consumed by the fury bubbling inside her. She had to outsmart them, to fight fire with fire. She began to strategize, her mind working overtime as she pieced together the fragments of her shattered world. No longer the victim, she transformed into a woman with purpose, intent on taking control of the situation. She realized that she had something they didn't, a clear, rational mind. She was no longer blinded by the emotional turmoil. Now, she saw them for what they truly were: manipulators, opportunists, and, above all, traitors. The very people she trusted had been plotting behind her back, and it was time to make them pay. The first step in her plan was to get organized. She knew that without concrete evidence, her words would be nothing more than accusations, empty and unprovable. But the truth was buried in the details of her husband's life, and the small inconsistencies she had noticed over time. He had been careless, leaving his phone unlocked, his emails unprotected. She had always been a careful observer, a trait she had taken for granted, but now it became her weapon. The more she searched, the clearer the extent of the betrayal became. She uncovered emails, transactions, and even a hidden account that had been used to funnel money away from her. Each new discovery was like a sharp stab to her chest, but it also pushed her forward. She wasn't just uncovering the lies, she was building her case, piece by piece, until the truth was undeniable. She found herself growing stronger with every document she uncovered, every lie that unraveled before her eyes. Her husband's casual deceit had made her feel like a fool, but now she understood that it wasn't her fault. She had been living in a web of lies, but the webs had started to tear, revealing the ugly truth. Her best friend's role in this betrayal was even more insidious. The emotional manipulation, the false reassurances, the way she had been fed lies in the guise of concern, all of it had been part of the plan to deceive her, to make her doubt her own instincts, to make her question her worth. It was a bitter realization, but it also solidified her resolve. She wasn't just uncovering financial fraud, she was unveiling the emotional devastation that had been carefully orchestrated to strip her of her confidence and self-esteem. She had been an accomplice in her own downfall, trusting the very people who were setting her up to fail. But now, it was time for her to turn the tables. Despite the emotional toll, she remained focused. Her mind sharpened, her thoughts becoming clearer as she realized that revenge wasn't about reckless action, it was about precision. Her next move was calculated. She would confront them, but not before she had all the facts, all the evidence. She would present the truth in such a way that there would be no room for excuses, no way for them to wriggle out of the consequences. The protagonist spent countless hours organizing the evidence she had gathered, creating a timeline, cross-referencing dates and amounts. She began to research legal options, speaking with experts who could help her understand the intricacies of the financial fraud that had been committed against her. But it wasn't just about the legal fight. This was her life, her future, and she wasn't going to let them take it away from her. Her research was thorough. She learned how to access hidden accounts, how to track financial transactions, and even how to use digital tools to confirm the authenticity of the evidence she had collected. She had been a victim once, but now, she was becoming something else, a fighter, someone who would stop at nothing to reclaim what was hers. And then came the day when everything came together. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when she uncovered a bank statement that linked her husband's hidden account to her best friend. It was irrefutable proof that they had been working together, plotting her financial ruin. The betrayal had been even deeper than she had imagined, but now she had everything she needed to confront them, to expose them for who they truly were. The protagonist's emotions had shifted. What once felt like a storm of rage was now a quiet, cold determination. She was no longer a woman shattered by betrayal, she was a woman in control. And with each piece of evidence, she could feel her confidence grow. The fear and uncertainty had been replaced by a sense of power. She was in the driver's seat now, and she was ready to take back control. But as she prepared for the confrontation, she knew that the moment of reckoning would be difficult. She had spent so long trying to understand why they had done this, trying to reconcile the people she had loved with the actions they had taken. But now, she understood. It wasn't about love. It was about greed, control, and betrayal. They had underestimated her, thought that they could get away with it. But they had made one fatal mistake: they had underestimated her strength. With everything in place, the protagonist was ready. The final confrontation was just a matter of time, but she wasn't anxious. She had done the work, uncovered the lies, and prepared herself. When the time came, she would stand before them, calm and composed, and demand the truth. She had taken back control. The tables had turned, and now, they would have to face the consequences. The day of reckoning arrived. The evidence was gathered, the plan meticulously laid out, and the final pieces of the puzzle were in place. There would be no more running, no more pretending that everything was okay. It was time to confront the ones who had so thoroughly shattered her life, the man she loved, and the woman she had once called her best friend. The betrayal had festered long enough, but now, she was ready. This wasn't going to be just another angry confrontation. No, this was a final showdown. It was her moment to take back control and to make them face the consequences of their deceit. The protagonist took a deep breath, steadying herself as she